Welcome to Write the World. I'm your host, Lorana Hoops. This show is brought to you by TLBTV and the Liberty Beacon Project. This is the show where we talk to all sorts of different writers and authors of all genres, and we give you some writing advice. And of course, we tell you about some great books that you need to check out. My guest today is super fun. Her name is Donna Carbone, and she lives in Florida currently. How's the weather there in Florida, Donna?
Very hot.
We went through a heat wave here a couple of weeks ago, so I can imagine. So how is writing going in Florida?
Excuse me, what was that?
I said, how is writing going in Florida?
Writing is going well in Florida. There are a lot of people with a lot of stories to tell, and I'm always happy to welcome them to my table where I do mentor new authors. So it's great.
That's awesome. So in addition to writing, you actually have a platform where you help local authors, correct?
I do. I have an adult writing critique class that I hold every week. I limit it to 10 people because last night's class went 4 hours. It's a long night. And then I also have what I call the young Hemingways. And those are 10 to 12-year-olds in gifted programs in local schools who I help and encourage to improve their writing skills because, as you know, writing on applications is vital to getting into the school of your choice.
Absolutely. And it's so funny. I'm a teacher, and it's so funny how kids think they don't have to write anything. And I'm like, yeah, writing's going to be a part of your life kind of forever. Like whether it's your job or not, you're going to have to write.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome that you're helping out these kids and especially helping them get into good schools that they want to go to because that's so important.
Yeah, well, you can always tell children whose parents are avid readers and insist that their children be avid readers. Their vocabulary is immensely different from the child that only plays video games.
Their writing is immensely different as well. I teach a creative writing class, and I had it for 6th through 12th graders. And so that was a wide gamut anyway, but I could tell from the kids who read a lot, their writing style was 10 times higher than the kids who have never read a book or have read like a book.
Absolutely. Well, the first assignment I gave the class this year was that they had to write about a subject that they held extreme passion for. And there was only one thing they could not write about: video games. The sound that went up in the room. And surprisingly, when they could not rely on video games, the subjects they wrote about were just, well, for me, an eye-opener. It was great.
That's awesome. I'll have to keep that in mind with mine because I have the same problem. They always want to pull in video games into their stories, and I'm like, no, keep them out. Keep them out of your story. Even my son, my oldest son is 7, and I started writing a kids series for him when he started reading because the books he was bringing home I thought were a little too low level, and I thought, I want you to be reading something that's a little bit more the way people actually speak. And so when it got time to write the second book, I said, what do you want me to write the second book about? And he had just finished watching this TV show about characters who go into a video game, and he was like, well, can we do about a video game? And I was like, no, we cannot.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that the books he was reading, he felt vocabulary-wise, I'm assuming, below his level. So the first children's book I wrote, Lammy and Me, is based on conversations I've had with my 4-year-old grandson, who I think is extremely intelligent, but I'm grandma. I'm allowed to think that.
Right?
However, because we are only 3 hours from Disney World, my daughter and son-in-law have taken both their children there numerous times. And so he has been exposed to a variety of cultures just by going to that vacation place. So I submitted the book to a publishing house just for the heck of it. And the critique I got back was that I used the terminology taiko drums when I was discussing a conversation I had had with him. And they said to me, no 4-year-old would know what a taiko drum is. I said, well, obviously you've not been to Disney World because it is the centerpiece of an entire show that is done at Disney. And I don't know anyone that has not seen it. And any child that has been there has learned that that's a taiko drum. So I thought to myself, who are these people? Have they never spoken to 4-year-olds? 4-year-olds are smarter than some 40-year-olds that I know.
My 4-year-old son is also very precocious, and he will say words that I'm just like, "What? I didn't even know that you knew that word."
Exactly. Exactly. We don't give them credit for the intellect that they have. And I don't ever want to talk down to a child. So I was not about to edit that book to keep anybody happy on the other side. So I self-published it.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, part of it was the vocabulary, and the other part was that every sentence was a simple sentence.
Yes.
I went to the store. I bought milk. And I was like, nobody talks like that. So I'm not going to write a kid's book that is
Exactly.
just simple sentences.
Exactly. I know.
So,
I understand completely.
yeah, I think we do a total disservice to our kids when we do that. I mean, the kids. That's another thing. We were talking about kids who read, that their vocabulary is so much different and their writing is so much different. And I think you see the same thing in kids whose parents or families or friends talk to them like we talk to each other versus
Yes.
baby talking with them. Because my 2-year-old, the other day we were out for a walk, and this dog came up to her and she was like, "Oh, she's so adorable." And I was like, I didn't even know she knew adorable. She
Right.
can't do ours very well, but I was like, okay, so this comes from, these are words that we say all the time that she picks up on and she hears. And I'm so glad that we don't do that baby talk with them.
Absolutely not. Just quick short story, hopefully, for you, because I don't want to tie up your time. But my husband is a doctor. So my children were raised in a home office environment. Mike's office was in the house. The walls were covered with posters of the human anatomy. Conversation revolved around illnesses and diseases. And I remember the first three-dimensional puzzle my son ever did was a pregnant woman, where you could actually take off the stomach, take out the fetus. We never talked baby talk. We explained it from the very beginning what it was. So he never had any shyness about the human anatomy, male or female. There were no code words for anything. We talked the real word. He's coming out of fourth grade one day, and he has a book in his hand, and I can see he has his finger stuck in a page of the book. And I'm standing with a very close friend who is of Spanish descent, who definitely did not speak anything but code language to her children. They were right. And my son is running down the sidewalk, and he says, Mom, I can't wait to get home and ask Dad what this means. And she whispers to me, I'm going to kill you if he says anything that I then have to explain to my children. And he got up to me, and I said, well, what do you want to ask Dad? He said, lymph nodes. I think they sound fascinating. She was so worried he was going to say something she was not prepared to talk about. And this is fourth grade.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's
So
crazy.
anyway, short story. Too long or short. But
All right. So let's talk more about your kids' books. So this first book that you said, tell me the name of it again.
Lammy and Me.
Lammy and Me. And what is this?
Lammy is Blake's very best friend. He is was a very lovely stuffed lamb, but 4 years after getting him, he is barely more than a rag. But Lammy knows every secret. Lammy provides every ounce of security that he needs. I just found the relationship with this, really, I mean, it looks like a terry cloth rag at this point. But without that lamb for these past 4 years, I think that little soul would be lost. So the relationship with Lammy, I use Lammy as a way of teaching good character. I write about friendship and loyalty and commitment, because Lammy provides all of those things to Blake. And so Blake, in return, has learned how to provide those things to his parents, his sister, his grandparents. He's learned the importance of all the things we want our children to embrace as they get older.
I love that. And it's so true. My 7-year-old has a bear that he's had since he was born. And that bear is hanging on by a thread, but he still takes that bear to school. He shoves it in his backpack and takes it to school with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's Lammy. The second book, which I've just hired an illustrator, is titled How Much Do You Love Me? And I actually have to give Blake the credit for this too, but I have honored my newest grandson, Connor, by naming him in the book. And Blake is very much a family-oriented child, and we spend a lot of time together. He and I have a very special relationship. So when he is leaving me, he said to me the other day, Nona, that's grandma in Italian. So, Nonna, I either have to cut off your hair or cut off your head. And I said, well, Blake, why would you want to do that? Because when you're not with me, I miss you so much. I need something to hold on to. How
Oh,
much do you love me when you're not with me? So we started, I'd say to him, I love you more than all the leaves on all the trees, all the stars across the skies, more than all the raindrops that have ever fallen and ever will fall. So we went into this so that he could repeat it back to me. And when my grandson, my newest grandson, was born 5 weeks premature, and I went out to stay with him in California, I found myself whispering these things to this infant. So I wrote the story about the lion cub Connor, who was born and who, growing up, sometimes felt not quite confident with the role he was going to be cast in as king of the jungle. So he constantly would ask his mother and father, how much do you love me? And that was the basis for him eventually becoming a mature lion and being able to go out into the world, because he knew no matter what, his parents would always love him.
I love that idea. That is so awesome.
So that's that one.
So your grandkids live all the way across on the other side of the...
Lake and Everest live right here, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away. So as I said, I spend a great deal of time with them. But the newest one is in Burbank, California, which requires a lot of flying back and forth. We Skype every Sunday, but it's not the same.
It is not the same. My parents live in Texas, where I'm from, but we now live on the West Coast, and so we rarely get to see them, like maybe once a year, because my parents don't fly, and so it's really hard that since they don't fly, and it's super expensive for us to pack up 5 people and fly. We can't do it very often. But I miss my kids having grandparents to grow up with.
Well, I am determined that I will have the relationship with this new grandson that I have with the other two, no matter what it takes. And it probably will bankrupt me, but that's okay.
It'll be worth it.
Absolutely. I'll go to the poorhouse, but I'll know my grandchildren know me and know that I love them. So that's what's important.
Exactly. Okay, so are these two your only kids' books that you have out right now?
The only two, and it's very recent. I did Lammy just a few months ago, and I just finished the second one, and I've just found an illustrator. So it'll be a little while before I get that one.
That's a tough search, isn't it? Finding an illustrator. I had an illustrator that I did for my first 2 kids' books, and I really love her. She's fantastic, but she got another job, and so the time waiting for my illustrations to come back in, I was like, I can't do this. It was like 4 months to get the illustrations, and so I've recently hired an old student of mine who is a very good artist, and so I'm excited to see what she can do. But it's tough.
Yeah, well, the fellow that did Lammy and Me is actually a student at the Burt Reynolds Institute, where I'm managing director. And he and I had a wonderful relationship. And I pitched to him, I said, Kevin, I have an idea for a book. Would you be interested in working together? We'll just share the profits if the book sells. It's going to be a very short book. It didn't require more than a few full-page type of illustrations. And he was gung-ho for it. And he did a wonderful job. But just recently, I approached him about the new book, and of course, I didn't want to ask him to do it on a residual basis again. You know, but what he wanted was just out of my price. I couldn't possibly.
Yeah.
So, honestly,
it's expensive. I think in all of my self-pubbing, I'm like, I really need to get some graphic artist courses, and because covers and illustrations are the 2 things I can't do, and they're the most expensive things.
Right. Well, you might want to rely on the photographs, as I do. You never know. See, now I would take my daughter's photographs and give them to Kevin, and I would, for example, Private Hell. My daughter had taken a picture of a rose that she had clipped from the backyard, and she had placed it on a mirror and taken a beautiful picture that was a perfect reflection. So you saw the 2 roses.
Right.
Now, Private Hell's subtitle is Sometimes Heaven and Hell Are the Same Place. Okay. So I asked him to take the reflected rose and burn it. Make it look like it was in hell, so that you had the beautiful rose of heaven and the ugly rose of hell. And he was able to do that, and that became the cover of the book.
I can see that. Is that behind you on the table?
Yes.
Can you bring that here so we can see it?
Yeah, I don't know how well it will come up.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
So it's really impressive if you can see it up front and in color, and you
Yes.
get the impression of what it is all about. And that book is semi-autobiographical because I am a survivor of domestic abuse and lucky to be alive, much as my daughter is a survivor of rape and lucky to be alive. So I use my life and her life to write these crime novels in the hope that other women will not have to go through what.
Wow. So that's going to lead us into the next part is your crime novels. These are adults books, obviously.
Absolutely.
Um, was Private Hell your first one or?
No, Private Hell was the second one, but Private Hell was the first one in that it sat in my computer for many, many years because it was very difficult for me to write it. And every time I would make a little bit of progress, the nightmares would return, so I would walk away from it again. So Through Thick and Thin, you can see that here. I don't know.
Yeah. Bring that up so we can see.
So Through Thick and Thin
Oh,
is
nice.
first in the Cat Lee and Marcy Wells crime novel series. Cat Lee's character is based on my daughter. These are two homicide detectives with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. So Cat Lee is based on my daughter, and Marcy Wells is based on her best friend since high school, Mary Bedwell Bain, who happens to be an actual CSI with the Sheriff's Office and was instrumental in capturing Jessica's attacker. She was the second phone call I made after 911. She brought in the Sheriff's Office, and they fulfilled their promise to Jessica to have him behind bars before the day was over, and they did.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
she is actually my expert when I want to talk about anything criminology. But their relationship is so unique. My daughter is very tall. She's almost 6 feet tall. She was a model for a while, long blonde hair, blue eyes, slender. Mary refers to herself as somewhat Oompa Loompa-ish. She's short and round, dark hair, beautiful face, white ivory skin, but they are as different physically as any two people could be, but they are of the same mindset, and they are sisters under the skin. So it's their relationship that powers these stories forward.
Wow. That's amazing. So how many books are in this series?
So there are two right now, and the third one should be finished by the end of the year. Unfortunately, I do have another job. I have to make a living, so you cannot not always be sitting at your computer 24 hours a day. So yeah, I'm hoping to finish total submission by the end of the year. All my books are based in Palm Beach County, so reading them, if you live here, you're almost reading a travel guide. I try to draw very vivid pictures with words of where these crimes take place. So that a lot of people, my fans, have said to me, "Oh my God, I'm reading that," and I'm saying, "I was there. Oh my, I was there." And so they can really envision. And then for people who don't live in the area, I want them to be able to see the scene of the crime just as well. So this is one thing I love about books more than screenplays and stage plays, is that I have the freedom to paint vivid pictures with words. Can't be
Absolutely.
a stage play or a screenplay.
And I think someone who did that really well was Stephen King. He always wrote his on, the Maine, most of them were in Maine or around the East Coast. And
Yes.
I've never been to Maine, but there is a part of me, because I grew up reading his books, and I was
Mhm.
like, I kind of want to go to Maine, and I just want to see all these places that, he
Exactly.
talks about.
Exactly. So I'm helping tourism in Florida.
There you go. Tourism in Florida. That's awesome. They should put you on the visitors welcome thing when you come in. Like,
Wouldn't
here,
that be nice? Yeah.
because local author, she can.
But it would be nice.
It would be great. Okay, so in addition to these crime novels, do you have any other adult books out before we talk about your plays?
I don't. I have the three crime novels, and as I said, they are all based on real crime, and they are all based on what I have learned either through personal experience or through the past 10 years of working with other rape survivors, because Jess and I now advocate for survivors. And just to segue a little bit, you'll always hear people say, "Oh, she wasn't a victim, she was a survivor." Let's never forget that you have to be a victim
To
before
be a
you can be a survivor.
Yeah.
And the trauma of that never goes away. So let's never diminish what happens to any crime victim. I don't care what the crime is. It stays with you for the rest of your life. And how you learn to live with that trauma is what determines what kind of a life you're going to have. But for
You know,
my daughter has always said her rapist, she was his first, and she always said she was very grateful because she made sure she was also his last.
good for her.
She knew how to survive. And I really, I have to give Katie Couric a little bit of credit for me writing this. I had written, after the trial, after 2 years had gone by, I had written a very short story, Assault on an Angel, which walked us through every aspect of not only the assault, but what happens through the criminal justice system, because it's never easy, okay? And on a whim, I published it on Amazon. I had never done anything. It was sort of my test case. Can I do this? 99 cents. Well, the History Channel found it, and Investigation Discovery found it. They both asked to do stories about Jessica. And we agreed, but we said we never wanted it sensationalized. If you're going to do it factually, we're on board, because our goal is to keep it from happening to other women. They were very good. They honored their commitment. But Katie Couric saw the episode on Investigation Discovery, and she invited us onto her show.
Oh my gosh.
And she, in talking off camera, when we were discussing, Jess and I had gone out on the talk circuit for a while, and sadly, women did not want to be told that they had to take responsibility for their own safety. I would say to them, while it is true you can go where you want and do what you want and wear what you want, behave as you want, you must also consider the consequences of those choices. Of course, we were pretty much crucified. We were accused of being a victim blaming. Well, certainly we're not victim blaming. We're victims ourselves. We're survivors. We're giving you the benefit of our experiences. So we stopped talking. We stopped going out on the talk circuit. And I mentioned that to Katie Couric, and she said, well, here's your opportunity to start writing some books. And so I did. That's how we started.
That's amazing. And I think that is unfortunate that people do that, because I think you're right. Like, yes, just what you wear doesn't necessarily mean you're inviting it, but you're also putting those thoughts in people's heads that make it a whole lot easier. And I think women need to think about that.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get on the whole rape thing, but the reality is the rapist doesn't care what you look like. He doesn't really care what you're wearing. He's the predator, you're the prey. What he looks for is easy access.
Right.
So if you're wearing a suit of armor, he figures you're not going to be able to get away from me. I will find a can opener big enough to be able to get you and assault you. So it isn't really what you're wearing, it's how he can gain access to you. You can't run in 5-inch heels.
That's true.
Run in a tight skirt. I'm not saying you can't wear them, but maybe you could bring a pair of shoes to throw in your pocketbook that if you have to leave a nightclub on your own, take your heels off. So you can.
Yeah. And, I watched something that they talked to attackers, not just rapists, but, robbers and things like that. And they interviewed them, and they would actually point out, and they said a lot of it too was just confidence. They looked for people who didn't look confident because they knew they would be easy praise. And I think that's one reason I started kickboxing about 12 years ago, and I've never stopped. I just really enjoy it. But I feel like I feel confident when I walk that if someone came up to me, I could defend myself, maybe not against a gun because, that's a little different, but you at least have that air of confidence that people are like, I don't want to mess with that. That's not an easy target. And you're right.
Well, they would never come near someone like you because you would already be giving off an aura of don't mess with me.
Right.
The problem sometimes with women who have taken self-defense is that they become overconfident. There is no way a woman is going to overpower a 265-pound man. We just have to accept the differences in our physical stature. It's not going to happen. So don't get into that situation to start with. However, if you do have something does happen and you have some type of tool you can rely on, that's wonderful. But it is not the ultimate defense. You have to always be aware of what's around you.
Yeah, and paying attention to surroundings. So many people with their phone attached to their ear all the time. They're not paying any attention to what's happening around them. And I think that's really important too.
So all of that is in my books, in narrative format, but these are hidden in the narrative, are subtle suggestion, so that it doesn't offend anybody, of what you can do to stay safe.
Well, that's amazing, and I give you props for writing about that. And I hope that it saves lives. And
I get a lot of emails, and not as many as I'd like to get, but I know I have helped some women, and that's satisfaction enough.
absolutely.
I don't ever have to be a millionaire. I'm a millionaire in other ways. Maybe not dollars and cents, but lives are worth a lot more than that. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so while we still have a few minutes, let's talk about your plays, because you also write plays and you've performed some of them, correct? Or directed them?
We did Shell of a Man at the Dallas Convention Center in April of 2015. It is my passion project. It took 5 years to write. It is the true story of a Black Vietnam veteran born in the Jim Crow South, picked his first bag of cotton at the age of 2, went into the military immediately after graduation from high school, did 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, came home, became a police officer, became an undercover narcotics agent, became president of the police union, and spiraled into the pits of depression and PTSD, and is now reclusive, living in an apartment, barely communicating with anyone, 2 marriages destroyed, does not see his child. I never met him face to face. I've never heard his voice other than his emails, but he was my muse. I consider him the brother of my heart. He taught me more than any textbook could ever teach me. And I will just tell you this. What prompted me to write his story is that when he told me about picking his first bag of cotton at the age of 2, he told me he had to fill a 25-pound flour sack with cotton before he was allowed to rest. So imagine a 2-year-old, all right, cotton it's not so heavy to pull around as flour would be, but it's still a 2-year-old child. Yeah. And he said, the only place there was for me to rest was under the wagon that carried all of these bags of cotton. He said, and to his little boy eyes, that wagon looked threatening. It looked heavy. So he chose to sleep under the bellies of the 2 donkeys that pulled the wagon. Well, to my maternal instinct, that seemed like a terrible choice.
Right.
And I asked him, Robert, were you never hurt? And he said, Donna, those donkeys knew I was there. They never stepped on me, and they never urinated on me, more than I can say for the people in my lives. Oh. And at that point, I knew I was writing that story.
Wow.
And although he is self-educated, he is extremely intelligent and well-read, and most of the time he shamed me into having to look up a quote that he said to me that I had no idea what. So I adore him, but I've never met him, and I'm right now very upset because I haven't heard from him in over a year.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
Not that that's unusual. He would often disappear from my life for extended periods and then come back. But when it goes too long, I'm always concerned that the ultimate end has come. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, because you said he served tours of duty as well, correct?
Yes, he was 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. Then he became a drill sergeant and a paratrooper. And this was not a man that ran away from life. This was a man that went after life and did what was necessary to fulfill whatever image he felt that a man of good character would be. He was a good man. But since Robert, I have talked to so many veterans. So PTSD and the veterans are my other passion, getting them the health care they need, and they just are not getting it.
They're not. And, my husband just retired a couple years ago from the Air Force. He served 21 years.
Wow.
And he suffered from PTSD when he came back, especially gunshots, so loud things really affected him. But it was interesting because when he went through a period of depression, I was like, honey, you need to go and get some help. And he said, I can't. They'll kick me out. And I thought, what is wrong with our system that they can't get help without fear of losing their jobs? That's not safe. And that just leads to even more depression and suicides and all sorts of things. And so I'm right there with you. I think
that's actually how Robert found me. I also am a journalist, and I had done a 2-part series entitled Military Macho and the Mind. And it was really about how it is so much easier for the military to repair a physical injury. What they can see
Right.
is very plausible and feasible to them. But mental, well, we all run away sometimes from someone with a mental disability. So the military that is so dependent on their men being strong and following orders, they turn a blind eye more than anyone else. You don't know how to fix that injury, so you
Right.
pretend it's not there. And that's why so many of our veterans are in the situation that they're in. Nobody knows how to help them, and rather than trying to find a help, they just medicate them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully things will start to change on that. I keep praying that eventually someone's going to wake up and realize, yeah, they
Yeah,
need some help.
they do.
And I think it helps that we have warriors like you out there writing their stories and producing plays, and people like Robert who are sharing their stories, even though he's kind of, you said he's become a recluse now, correct?
Been reclusive for a long time. He just finds it easier to stay. I'm not saying he doesn't have any friends or doesn't socialize, but he does
Right.
not go out a lot and he doesn't socialize a lot because he is afraid of how he will react in a social situation in public.
Yeah.
So he
Absolutely.
learned to just stay away from it, which is very sad.
Mm. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you today, Donna, and hearing all about the wonderful projects you've got going on in addition to your writing. You
Well,
must keep yourself very busy.
yes, I think I'm going to have to clone myself pretty soon.
Yeah, I decided that a long time ago. So far, I'm not successful, but I need about 3 of me.
Absolutely. But it's been great. I'm so grateful that you agreed to speak with me and you gave me this opportunity. I do thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Absolutely. It's always my pleasure to speak with authors and get your books out there. And for those of you watching, the link right above will have the article will have all of Donna's links, so you can check out her books. And if you're in Florida and you're an author, maybe you can hook up with her. And she's got some wonderful things that she's doing. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you right here next time on Write the World.